And we begin with India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. India's first full-time woman finance minister will announce her first budget, a budget that will outline the priorities of Modi government 2.0. The budget is widely expected to boost spending and provide tax relief. Just last night, the finance minister was giving final touches to the budget at the finance ministry along with the Minister of State for Finance, Anurag Thakur. Remember, another focus of the budget will be to boost domestic consumption and address the rural crisis. The government could propose measures to boost consumer demand and ease rural stress to support the economy. While presenting the budget, Nirmala Sitharaman may also announce the government's intent on introducing a new direct tax code, an idea that has been pending for 9 years. Another thing to closely watch out for will be announcements regarding the non-banking financial companies, also known as the shadow banking sector. Just last year, the government had taken control of its financial services after its defaults triggered fears that it might collapse. The finance ministry may also focus on steps to boost employment and exports. It may consider fiscal incentives like interest rate subvention and lower tax rates.
Budget should be good. I hope many of the ideas in the economic survey will find space in the budget.
That's KV Subramaniam, Chief Economic Advisor, telling his expectations before Nirmala Sitharaman presents the budget, saying the budget should be good. And the economic survey that came out yesterday that was presented by the Chief Economic Advisor, KV Subramanian, is in all senses pointed towards the way the government is thinking about economic policy formation. And we are bringing you all the latest updates on the Indian budget today here on WION World is One. We have a very special set of guests joining us all through the day to get us the right perspective on how crucial this budget is and how crucial the measures announced in it are. And we have Aditya Ghosh, CEO and India and South Asia of Oyo Hotels and Homes, joining us on the broadcaster here on WION World is One. Aditya, thank you so much for being with us. Talk to us. The first question I want to begin this budget day by asking you is that should the government give more sops to the startup sector? You know, because they are increasingly becoming a major job creator.
Yes, I think and I'm not saying startups only in the e-commerce sector, but startups in development, startups in consumer products, in consumer tech, wherever there is a possibility of creating many more job opportunities for people, especially youngsters who are coming into the workforce. I think that would be something that if the government through its policies can encourage and reward those who are creating many more jobs than others, I think that's going to go a big way. One of the big blessings that India has is that it is sitting on one of the world's largest populations of young men and women between the age of 18 and 35. And if we are able to provide the right job opportunities for this massive set of the population, then it can kind of exponentially take us to the goals which India has for itself.
Right, Aditya, and we are talking as we get live visuals of India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman along with the Minister of State for Finance Anurag Thakur and the rest of the team that has put the budget 2019-20 together.
Madam, wait please. Ma'am, wait please.
The Finance Minister holding the document in her hands that has the Indian government symbol stamped in gold on it. Quite a departure in tradition from the suitcases that we have seen before that finance ministers usually carry in India into the parliament to present the budget. This is a red color casing that comes with the golden emblem of the Indian government, the three lions. So Nirmala Sitharaman is off. She's left the Ministry of Finance building. And these are the latest visuals of that. That's the budget document in our hands, ladies and gentlemen, and she will be presenting it shortly in the Parliament. Huge expectations from this budget. India's first full-time woman Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, whose performance as a Defence Minister was exemplary in the previous Modi government, and now in Modi 2.0 government, she kicks off her innings as Finance Minister with this budget.
Much easier to do business in India than it was in the past. And that is probably a journey. Now, if you ask me individually, as selfishly, I will say I wish it was even easier. And I think that is also the objective of the government. So I'm not saying something that is at cross purposes with what the government's stated policy is. But more specifically, for instance, Mr. Arun Jaitley, the former finance minister, recently has floated an idea of merging the two GST slabs of 12% and 18%. I think that would be a very encouraging move if it came down to the lower slab of 12%, because many of the states are already in the positive, and that would make it a much more friendly tax regime, indirect tax regime for businesses to work in. And more than startup companies like us or large businesses like us, it will positively impact a lot of small and medium industries as well.
That's Aditya Ghosh, CEO of OYO Rooms of India and South Asia. We are also bringing you the latest visuals of India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, who has left the Ministry of Finance building with the budget document in her hands. The entire team standing together for a photo op before she left just a few minutes ago. And she's on her way to the Parliament to present the Modi 2.0 government's first budget for the year 2019-20.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Madam, wait, please. Ma'am, wait, please.
Now, keep in mind, India is the fastest growing large economy in the world. But then the quality of that growth may not be all that great. And we're bringing you this chart that you can have a look at. The International Monetary Fund's 2019 forecast of GDP growth for India and some of the other countries in the region, along with estimates of overall government revenues and expenditure, is on your screens right now. And I want to take a look at that. While India is the fastest growing economy among the lot, 7.3%, India runs the highest fiscal deficit that's circled on your screen, 6.9% in the world. That's according to IMF forecast. The difference between government revenues and spending as a percentage of GDP is the highest for India. It's inching up to 7%. Vietnam, for instance, is expected to grow by 6.5% this year, but its fiscal deficit is a much lower 4.5% of GDP. A huge part of India's growth has been funded by massive government expenditure, which is not likely to decrease going further. And India's expenditure is higher than that of a developed country like South Korea. Big chunk of these expenses is interest on debt, which in turn is higher because of excessive borrowing by the governments in the past. And the Indian government's debt as a proportion of GDP is much higher than most others. Debt is directly linked to the fiscal deficit, which is further financed by different kinds of loans. Now, according to the Global Fitch Ratings Agency, central and state governments of India together have borrowed more than 300% of their revenues. Data shows that from 2013 to 2017, the general government debt is at over 340% of its revenues. But last year, it has seen a nominal decline to 329%. India's debt to GDP ratio is about 69% in the financial year 2019, which is higher than other countries of similar Fitch ratings grade, which is BBB. And that makes India's economy extremely vulnerable because only developed countries tend to have high debt to GDP ratios. But then they have the advantage of a huge revenue base. However, India doesn't have one. In fact, according to latest data, GST collections have fallen below the 1 lakh crore rupee mark for the first time. That means indirect tax revenues are shrinking. And that's certainly not a good sign. And with that, let's begin another special guest on the broadcast. We have Mr. Madan Sabnavis, the Chief Economist of Care Ratings, joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Sabnavis, thank you so much for being with us. We were just talking about ratings, and I want to begin by asking you, do you expect it to be a big bang budget, so to speak?
See, there are lots of expectations that there may be something big bang in this particular budget, mainly on account of the fact that there are problems in terms of growth, consumption, investment, and therefore there are expectations that maybe the government may have certain specific announcements in order to boost investment and consumption. But to my mind, I think that the kind of restraints or the constraints which have developed ever since we had the revised numbers coming in on the budget for 2018-19, we have seen that there has been a shortfall in revenue. And on the other hand, we have seen that the expenditures which were budgeted for during the interim time is something which has to be met. Now today, if I'm looking at the kind of a deficit which was there in terms of the revised numbers for 18-19 and actual numbers, it's around 1.5 lakh crores. So quite clearly the government will have to try and strive to increase revenue, and these revenue growths in both tax and non-tax will have to almost double in order to make sure we can meet the commitments in the interim budget. So therefore, I don't think there will be anything big bang in terms of budgetary numbers. But in terms of future policy, maybe something in terms of what they could do on the corporate tax rate, what they could do on the investment side, I think that's some kind of an indication which may be given.
And that brings me to my next question. Will the Finance Minister be able to achieve the fiscal deficit target?
See, now if you're looking at the interim budget, we have seen that the fiscal deficit has been targeted at 3.4%. Now, last year also we had the number of 3.4%, and we have managed to meet it. But we should remember that in order to do so, there were quite a few compromises which were done in terms of the budgetary numbers. For example, we had seen that the tax revenue did not increase. So what the government has done is they've cut down on the revenue expenditure, which was done on the basis of rolling over the food subsidy bill, which is now being paid in the months of April and May of 2019. Similarly, we also saw that capital expenditure was compromised to a certain extent in order to make sure that the fiscal deficit number will be met. So all this means that meeting the fiscal deficit number target is more of an academic exercise, something which will always be done. But the quality of the effort which goes into achieving it is something which is more important, which we'll know by the end of the year only.
Right, and on that note, Mr. Sabnavis, please hold on with us. We also have our colleague Sumit Chaturvedi joining us on the broadcast as markets have opened in India. Sumit, talk to us. What's it looking like on Dalal Street?
Well, it's from the last few days, there's a lot of volatility in the markets because definitely there are expectations about the budget. Last time we saw the budget, on the budget day itself, Sensex touched 40,000 mark. That was an emotional connect. They wanted the market to touch 40,000 mark, and that's what has led to the today also the emotions are running high as far as markets are concerned. Big takeaways which will be seen from the market's point of view will be first investments. What are the steps that are required to boost investment? Which are the sectors that will receive the investments, be it agriculture, auto, infrastructure? Those stocks will be traded very well on the Sensex and Nifty today. Also, they'll be seeing what are the sectors that are getting the flack, which means which are the sectors that are going to contribute to the economy. They will be taxed the most, and those stocks can be better in the market. They will get better, in fact, in the market. So a lot of money is in the play in the market today because on the budget day, a lot of volatility, ups and downs. So markets, both Sensex and Nifty, they typically look for these big overall, we can say that targets. What will be the fiscal deficit target? Will it be increased or decreased? That is also one big factor markets will be looking out for. So a lot of factors. In fact, for the last few days, the markets have been quite, I would say, because they have been flat. There's no big jump or big coming down of the markets from the last few days. And as far as today markets are concerned, it looks like they have opened in green only because a lot of hopes are there from the point of view of Sensex and Nifty and traders. Though some traders are of the view that budget is a colonial era relic and there's not much significance of it. But yes, markets do depend a lot on the budget for that.
Right, depends a lot on the budget, is the word coming in from Sumit Chaturvedi. Sumit will be joining us all through the day with all the latest updates on that front. But for now, we have a special guest joining us, Mr. A.K. Prabhakar, joining us, Head of Research of IDBI Capital. Thank you so much, Mr. Prabhakar, for being with us here on WION World is One. I want to begin by asking you your initial reactions to the way markets have opened.
Good morning. Yeah, markets have given a thumbs up for the budget, so we expect a roadmap for the next 5 years, and we don't expect any taxes to go up. So that is likely to be positive for the market. So I think today infrastructure stocks, anything connected with defense are likely to do very well, and that will be the focus of the government.
But in that sense, we've been asking other people this as well. Do you expect this to be a big bang budget? Because it's a difficult budget for the government to present. Fiscal deficit is so high, but at the same time, there needs to be a consumption boost for the growth trajectory to keep going upwards.
Yeah, to boost consumption, I think there should be some tax reduction. That will be the major trigger for the market. If there is some income tax benefit, if there is some corporate tax benefit or double taxation, now dividend distribution tax is there. If there is a reduction in that, now that will be the booster to the market. Rather than increasing the spending, it can be through the other means. By cutting tax, you can increase the spending. So that will give boost to the market. And I hope some rationalization of taxes will be there.
Right. We're just looking at the Sensex and the Nifty on our screens. 0.1% and 0.15% in the green, both for the Sensex and the Nifty. What do you think has the markets already factored in what kind of a budget is going to be? Also, are you seeing any kind of a reaction to the economic survey data which came out yesterday?
Yeah, economic survey has given a roadmap. Now, economic survey is talking about our economy doubling, almost becoming $5 trillion economy by 2025. And there are a lot of roadmaps given in that. And if the budget has to fulfill that, it takes time. So I think it is a roadmap, and the reform process are on process, and it is a continuity. So I think everything will fall in stream. One single budget is not going to change anything.
One single budget is not going to change anything. Mr. A.K. Prabhakar, we do know that Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister, is on her way. We've been showing visuals of the budget document she's been carrying from the Finance Ministry to the Parliament. But before I let you go, I want to also ask you, in terms of how do you expect the market to behave for Budget Day?
I'm positive. I think if some tax rationalization happens, some minimum cut also will boost the market and boost the sentiment. So I'm positive on the market. I'm expecting all-time high to trigger today or by Monday. You are expecting an all-time high to be triggered today or by Monday. But if there is a wish list from Dalal Street for North Block, the top three that the markets would want from the Finance Minister, what would it be? Cut in corporate tax, cut in income tax, that will boost spending, and higher defense spending and more infrastructure spending.
Right, that's a wish list that includes four then in the top four as far as what the markets...